All right there, good people, it's me, good old Morris. Yes, at your service, yes. And I'm here to share with you a real family affair among my roses. Okay, we're over here at Morris's, we'll just call it Morris's penthouse. Tropical Gigolo Gardens, ladies and gentlemen. I think that had a nice little ring to it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's look at these roses here. This rose here in the middle is a highly rated rose, hybrid tea rose. This is a Chrysler Imperial rose. And this rose was a big hit in the rose community back in the 1950s, I believe, and right next door to this Chrysler Imperial, where we're looking at this Mr. Lincoln rose here. And both of these roses are a very highly fragrant damask scented rose, and they have a lovely dark red, deep velvety red dark color. And right next door to this Mr. Lincoln and Chrysler Imperial hybrid tea rose, we're looking at this Oklahoma rose here. And this is another hybrid tea rose that has just a beautiful deep dark red, among the darkest of all the deep dark red roses. And here's another here of this Oklahoma. I love the deep dark red color. This is a true family affair. This Chrysler Imperial that you see right here in the middle will be the mother rose to this Mr. Lincoln rose and also this Oklahoma rose here. You better look at this Oklahoma here. It is a very deep dark red rose. This Chrysler Imperial is also the mother rose to this Oklahoma rose. This really deep dark beautiful red rose, which is my favorite color. When you look at this Chrysler Imperial, you can see the globe shape finish in the middle is quite different than what its sibling, the Mr. Lincoln, is. Almost like a crescent teacup style rose. Very beautiful. I've noticed that this Mr. Lincoln and this Chrysler Imperial, they look very much alike in color. They are very similar in color, this Chrysler Imperial and this Mr. Lincoln. Now, on an average, first of all, I'm a deep dark red lover of roses. That would be my favorite color. And these two, I've noticed that this Mr. Lincoln takes on a very similar color. It might be slightly darker than the Chrysler Imperial, but they're very close in color. Whereas this Oklahoma rose here is much darker. It's a deep dark black red, and it is a very beautiful color rose, which is my favorite. This Chrysler Imperial was mated with this Charles Malloran rose, and the mating process of the Chrysler Imperial and the Charles Malloran rose produced this Mr. Lincoln and this Oklahoma. So this Oklahoma and this Mr. Lincoln rose are actually brother and sister roses. And they were mated with this Chrysler Imperial and the Charles Malloran. I've noticed that the Mr. Lincoln looks more like the Chrysler Imperial in color, whereas the Mr. Lincoln is a very tall hybrid tea rose. The Chrysler Imperial is a rather shorter hybrid tea rose than what this Oklahoma and this Mr. Lincoln is. But I've noticed it seems like this mother rose, the Chrysler Imperial, has passed her genes on to this Mr. Lincoln rose, and this this Oklahoma rose looks more like the father parental rose, which is the Charles Malloran rose that was mated with this Chrysler Imperial. Another thing that's interesting about all three of these roses, this family affair of roses, is that sometimes this Oklahoma will produce these very pink looking roses and very Chrysler Imperial and Mr. Lincoln looking roses right under Oklahoma. And then sometimes this Mr. Lincoln here will also produce These really deep, deep, dark burgundy red roses that you see right here on this Oklahoma. But for the most part, this is pretty much the definition of all three of these roses here. This is pretty much the definition. The Mr. Lincoln will always look more like this Chrysler Imperial. They're almost identical in color. The deep dark red color with the velvety dark sheen to it. You'll see slightly more in the Mr. Lincoln, but this Chrysler Imperial is definitely very close. Naturally, the offsprings of this Chrysler Imperial and the Charles Mallory Rose, which is a deep, deep, deep dark red rose that the Oklahoma seem to have taken after. Looks more like that Charles Mallory Rose. Right, yeah. So this Oklahoma, what makes this Oklahoma significant is that it has taken on the hues, the colors, the deep, deep darkness of its father rose, the Charles Maryland, and this Mr. Lincoln has definitely taken on the color of this lovely Chrysler Imperial rose, which is a product of two of my favorite roses, the Mirandy rose, which is like a deep, deep dark red mixed with this deep, deep, deep dark pink, highly fragrant, as well as the Mirandy is also highly fragrant. That Chrysler, that Charlotte, yes, that Charlotte Armstrong rose, deep dark pink, mixed with the Mirandy, deep, deep dark, smoky kind of red, has produced this lovely Chrysler Imperial. And as I do look closer, I can definitely see the kind of pinkness and that deep dark red of that Mirandy, yes, and the Charlotte Armstrong rose, which has produced this lovely Chrysler Imperial. I'm speaking so much about these roses because these are really my favorite. These are my favorite. And we're over here in good old Detroit, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, yes, indeed. And I just thought that I would share this with you. And I'm going to share some of my other roses. And this is for those of us out here in the community who love those deep, deep, dark, lovely red roses. Well, you have them here. You have a Mr. Lincoln rose. In the middle, you have a Chrysler Imperial. And over here, you've got this lovely Oklahoma rose. The Mr. Lincoln rose and this Oklahoma, they smell to me almost identical. They're totally different roses. That's what makes it interesting. And this Chrysler Imperial also has a very lovely, strong, beautiful fragrance. Both are. All three are. And I love these roses, and I just thought that I would share these roses, my deep, deep, dark red Mr. Lincoln roses. It really can get dark, very much like this Oklahoma sometimes. But for the most part, the Mr. Lincolns are going to look more like the Chrysler Imperial in color. And I can guarantee you that all three of these roses, they have some of the most beautiful fragrances that you will ever experience. Yes, in a rose, yes, I'm telling you. And before I go, let me share you my mother's favorite roses. And at these deep, 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 dark pink roses. And these would be the favorite roses of my mother. Right here you're looking at this Miss All-American Beauty rose, and this is a shorter rose bush. This taller rose bush that you see here, this rose is an All My Loving rose. And although it is listed as a moderately fragrant rose, I'm here to tell you that this is a strong fragrant rose, and it smells just like some kind of a sweet spice. It has this very unusual, intoxicating, spicy fragrance that is mind-blowing to me. And this shorter rose bush here, which is also a deep, dark pink, and these will be the only colors that my mother, Miss Barbara Jean, yes, sweet Barbara Jean, that's my mother, she would never allow any other color but these deep, deep, dark, hot pink roses. And I have these two over here just in honor of my mother. These are the only roses that she would allow in her home This Miss All-American Beauty has just an All-American rose, an old rose fragrance. It smells really good. And as I said earlier, this rose, this is all my loving rose, deep, dark, hot pink. This is a very, very, very spicy fragrance like no other. It's quite intoxicating. It's just a very unusual fragrance for a rose. A very spicy fragrance. And once again, these lovely Miss All-American Beauty deep, deep, dark, hot pink roses. These roses have a very old rose, old-fashioned, all-American fragranced rose, and they really are nice. Okay, and I'm going to share with you, maybe this last one here if we have more time. This is the seductive Sedona hybrid tea rose, and this rose has a powerful, strong fragrance, a very beautiful, strong fragrance, and it has the look of the tropics. The colors on this lovely rose are all coral. It has a combination of coral reds, coral pinks, coral orange, and as it opens up in full bloom, this lovely rose, this Sedona Rose, which looks like the sunset. When you look at the sunset in the sky, especially if you were like in a warm tropical area, this rose was named after a city in Arizona, out in the desert, or is it Nevada? I know it's one of those desert type states, and it is a Sedona rose, and it looks like the tropical sunset. Very beautiful roses, and this rose has a special glow to it. It really glows, ladies and gentlemen. If you really want to feel like you're somewhere in paradise, or if you're somewhere in the tropics, this would be the rose for you. It is an amazing rose, and I absolutely love it. When the rose fully opens up, it turns into this lovely vermilion pink, this kind of coral pink. Just a very beautiful, beautiful color. It looks very much like the Tropicana rose. All of these roses, well, most of them, especially these ones I spoke with you earlier about, this lovely Oklahoma that you see here, this family affair of roses with this lovely Oklahoma and this beautiful Chrysler Imperial, yes, and this lovely Mr. Lincoln, yes. Highly fragrant, highly rated. Both of these roses were sensations when they were first produced. This Chrysler Imperial was the winner of the Gamble Award in the AARS, the American Rose Society. And this is like a really big deal with these roses. They are among the most requested hybrid tea dark red roses. Both. I think this Mr. Lincoln was awarded the Gamble Award and, top honor at the American Rose Society in maybe the early 60s, somewhere in the 40s and the 50s was when this Chrysler Imperial, was crowned, king and queen of all roses. This Chrysler Imperial in the middle gave birth to both of these roses, this Mr. Lincoln and this lovely Oklahoma. This Chrysler Imperial was mated with the Charles Mallory rose and produced this Mr. Lincoln.